Hi, I'm Dr. Megan Wilkerson, a passionate STEM advocate, scientist, and mentor. With a dual title doctorate in entomology and international agriculture and development, I spent 3 years working alongside small farmers in developing countries like Lebanon, Burkina Faso, and Ghana to reduce insect related crop decline. Now, as a chief scientist in our nation's capital, I write environmental regulations, facilitate outreach, and train government specialists to ensure the safety of residents and wildlife. Outreach and environmental advocacy are the most inspiring parts of my work. I'm dedicated to mentoring future generations of scholars, ensuring they become responsible stewards of our natural resources. My leadership style is rooted in the principle you have to see it to be it. I believe in leading by example and actively working to dismantle barriers that hinder minorities in STEM. By building a supportive network, staying grounded in my purpose, and practicing self compassion and authenticity, I overcome obstacles and thrive in my career as a scientist and STEM advocate. Supporting women as catalysts of change involves highlighting diverse voices, experiences, and providing funding opportunities and mentorship, and fostering a culture of encouragement and self acceptance for individual uniqueness and unconventional qualities. Together, we can empower women to drive positive change and create a more inclusive future for all. Thank you.
Please join our next seminar in the Catalyst of Change series on April 9th.
Welcome to the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. There is interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. To access the interpretation, you choose the language of your preference by clicking the translation button at the base of your Zoom screen. This seminar will be recorded and made available on the CIMIT webcast. We invite you to follow us in LinkedIn, YouTube, and social media using the hashtag Women in Science for the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. On the screen, you can see the QR code that will give you access to Slido for submitting questions and comments to be addressed in the Q&A session. We will be hearing today from an inspiring agricultural scientist and author, Dr. Megan Wilkerson. Right after her presentation, Megan Wilkerson will have a conversation with Dr. Hannah Gichungi, Serious Seed Systems Research Associate based at CIMIT, Kenya. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Brian Govarts, Director General of CIMIT, to officially open the event and welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Megan Wilkerson. Dr. Bram, over to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and lovely to see you once again. And good day, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. Welcome to once again a Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science webinar. And as you could see already in the video, the lemma of today's Catalyst of Change is that you can't believe it if you can't see it. And let that exactly be the motto why we launched and started to conceive end of 2022 and launched mid-2023 our TED Talk meets Fireside Chat style series on women leaders. And we did that because we are convinced that new role models need to be made visible, so women leaders in science institutions like ours can see what potential paths are to a self-fulfilling career and an all-round life that integrates all different aspects. In this series, therefore, we highlight women who are leaders in all sorts of capacities. You can be a leader in your family, in your field, in your community, in your country, in your organization, because we believe that leadership styles can and take many different forms. Today, I'm very honored to have Megan Wilkerson here as our number 17 Catalyst of Change speaker, and rest assured, we have more speakers lined up. Megan Wilkerson is the chief scientist at the Department of Energy and Environment in the United States federal government. She's an entomologist by training. She specializes in international agriculture, social and environmental assessment, strategic planning, program design, and evaluation. She is a force because she has lived and worked alongside youth farmers and within government agencies. She has driven change by evaluating international agricultural programs and proposing pathways to improvement through analytics, to cost benefit evaluations so that there can be fact-based improvements of programs like those that she looked at in Trinidad, South Africa, Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, Lebanon, and Ghana. She works closely today also with smallholder farmers and donor agencies to modernize agricultural programs and mobilize resources. In addition to international capacity building, she offers one-on-one coaching and mentorship to support the success of scholars on their economic journey. She's also passionate about being a role model to those that love science and particularly those that love bugs. She wrote the international bestseller coloring book, A to Z Bug Facts coloring books. So run to Amazon and get the latest interesting coloring book of a true catalyst of change and take it home to maybe do some coloring yourself for those that are close to you. I'm sure that we will enjoy and learn a lot from Megan's outstanding leadership experience. Therefore, without further ado, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker. Welcome, Megan. Over to you.
Hi, Dr. Brum. Thank you so much. And thank you to your organization. Like when I got the email to participate, I had to double check and make sure it was sent to me because the women that you previously interviewed have just been phenomenal trailblazers in the field. And I'm just honored to be among such, strong women, independent leaders. And I'm gonna discuss 6 topics during my talk today. I'm gonna talk about how I became a scientist, some of the challenges I face, the lessons that I've learned, the people who've mentored me, how they've impacted my trajectory. And finally, I'll end off with my professional career and how I gained fulfillment from that. So first, thank you to the listeners and thank you to Submit for having me. And how did I become a scientist? So I've always been a passionate and naturally curious person from the beginning. And I fell in love with science in the 3rd grade. I had a teacher, Miss Camacho, and passionate teachers make a tremendous difference on students. And when I took science from her, she made science so accessible. Like she taught us osmosis from buying little kiddie pools, and we waited in the kiddie pools till our fingers were pruned. We cooked hot dogs using solar energy from the sun by lining shoeboxes with aluminum foil. She just made science experimental and fun. So fast forward to college, I went to Fort Valley State University and I took a genetics course from Dr. Shakespeare. And that was the first, Black scientist that looked like me. She made attaining a PhD, she made it seem obtainable. And her poise, I was just so in awe by her confidence and the way in which she made the material relatable. And that was the first time I envisioned myself as, a doctoral recipient. So I was like, maybe I can get a PhD. She made it seem and feel possible. And then I studied abroad in South Africa, and then I found international agriculture. So those are like the pieces that, brought me to where I am today. And so for my dissertation research, I spent 2 years in Ghana working with cocoa farmers. So 70% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa, mainly Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And farmers are losing, like 70% of their yields to insect associated diseases. So once I started working with small farmers and throughout my journey, working with children to diversify STEM, that's when I fell in love and solidified my decision to become a scientist. And I faced a lot of challenges. So my biggest challenge has been me, but today my biggest challenge was technology, getting the Zoom set up. But luckily everybody was patient and helpful. But I love danger. I'm outspoken, overachiever, and so I have to remedy those challenges that I have within myself. And I hate the word no. And 4 of the biggest obstacles, the biggest devils that I encountered through my journey was number 1 was self-doubt. Am I good enough? Do I contribute value to a space? My second obstacle was imposter syndrome. Even receiving this email to participate as a woman leader in science, I was like, wait a minute, am I enough? So just looking at the other women who contributed, just solidifying myself as a trailblazer, reminding myself that I contribute value, that I belong here. The third obstacle was definitely procrastination. And as people, sometimes we feel like we always have tomorrow, but tomorrow isn't promised. So I try to, live in the present and not procrastinate as much as I used to. And then finally, comparison. Comparison has been a huge obstacle for me as well. So similar scientists that have taken my path, some are more further along than I am, some have, more accolades than I do. So finding myself only comparing myself to who I was, not to others and what they've accomplished. That's been a huge thing of mine too. So and in a field with agriculture or with science, it's a very male, pale, stale, frail, dominated field. And so sometimes I struggle with being being struggle with my authenticity. So showing up as myself has been a challenge sometimes when I don't fit the mold. And so I don't look typically what a scientist would look like. And I have to show people I have the degree, I have the experience, I'm a scientist, so I belong here. So being able to show up as my authentic self, that's something that I struggle with because people want you to talk a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. But every single person on earth is already taken. So you're the only you. So showing up as yourself has been a huge challenge, but that's something that I challenge myself to do daily. And I've learned a lot of lessons on my path. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that validation is not an outside job. No one person can validate you. Because if you're tied to people's compliments, you'll be crippled by their criticism. So I've found to do things that will allow me to validate myself. And one of the largest things is impact. So being able to practice my passion, and I feel like impact is the greatest form of success. So occupying spaces where I'm celebrated and where my expertise is needed, and showing the future generation of STEM scholars, what a scientist can look like and how fulfilling the careers can be, and identifying the things that I need that are in others and being able to ask for help when I need to. So those have been lessons that I've learned. And also having the right people around you is very powerful. So your tribe, determines your vibe. So having people who can add to you, people that are equally yoked, and being able to ask for help when you need to. And when I say it takes a village, I have a team of people to thank for my successes. The first person is my mom. She has been so supportive, and she's shown up for me in ways that I would never be able to repay her. And she has just been the definition of unconditional love. And when I was growing up, she told me something that stuck with me from childhood. She said, everything you touch turns to gold. And so I don't want to get emotional, but she's always just been around. So having her be my foundation and be my rock has just been, amazing. And then I have an executive coach. So 3 years ago, I didn't even know what an executive presence was. And so now I have an amazing executive coach. Her name is Emily Barnes. And so she not only holds a mirror to me, she has a mirror in one hand and resources in the other. So she's constantly showing me ways that I can improve upon myself, giving me resources I need to overcome any obstacles, and just being a cheerleader and a champion. And then the director of my agency, oh my gosh, this was not supposed to be an emotional video. The director of my agency, Richard Jackson, he is just the prototype of what a leader should be. So recommending me for opportunities, and he pushes me to think outside the box, and motivation on a daily basis. And just when I have ideas, he's always there to help add to my ideas. And then when I'm facing obstacles, he will minimize them. So something that I thought was a mountain, after speaking with him, I'd be like, okay, that's just a puddle, let me just step over it. And last but not least, it's important to have mentors that you don't know. So my number one mentor that I never met, her name is Earthlyn Cousin, and she was the U.S. ambassador to Rome. So she works in the food security space. And although I've never met her, for the past 10 years, I have been stalking this lady's career. Thank God I'm not in jail. But every talk she has, the programs that she administers, she's fed over 1 million people. And she's just doing phenomenal work in the field. And she's someone that I would, aspire to make similar change. Every space she enters, she elevates. So it's important to have mentors that are doing things that you aspire to do as well. So my mom, my executive coach Emily, my director Richard, and Earthlyn Cousin, those are the people that I've found mentorship from, and they've impacted me in ways that I just I wouldn't be who I was today without them. And so my mom has just been a constant builder, a rock, and my executive coach pouring into me, my director who's been a leader in my life, and then earthling cousins who showed me that I can dream bigger, and impossible, it just doesn't exist in her world. And so these experiences have shaped my career, but like I think the number one thing is giving back. So like a quote that I choose to live by is that some people will rate their success based on accolades, but the true measure of success is one's impact. So I'm constantly finding ways to make my life more intentional and more impactful. And one space that I love occupying is working with youth. And so I did make my first thing, this coloring book, and it started off as just a regular project. And as a scientist, many scientists can't, well, they're great at working in a laboratory or working on projects, but you have to be able to communicate that science in a way that's digestible and inviting to youth and your colleagues. So I tasked myself with making this project. I'm really passionate about art. And the coloring book has just been phenomenal. It's on Amazon, and Amazon interviewed me a couple weeks back, and I've sold copies in Germany and Australia and Canada and like all these different countries, and I'm constantly getting feedback and appreciation. And then when I used to go to elementary schools to talk about science and talk about diverse careers in STEM. One class in particular, Mr. Stephen Fleming's class, they wrote me letters. And when I read those letters all the time to remind myself of my why. It's so important to be deeply rooted in your why, especially when you like on your path and you don't know which way to turn. Reminding yourself and being grounded in your why is a good place to start. And so when I read those letters from the elementary school students and they're saying like, I want to be a scientist like you, I want to be an entomologist, can you be my grandma? So things like that just remind me that I'm on the right path, and also saying yes to opportunities, even when you feel like you're not prepared, when you're not ready, when you're scared to do it, just doing it anyway. So those have been the things that made me who I am today. And I come from a strong family of leaders. My family owns the oldest Black owned and operated funeral home in the South. So I was raised in a funeral home. So now that I'm, an entomologist with a background in mortuary, it's like I'm the creepiest person you would ever meet. But I just find ways to make my life to contribute impact in the life of others and live an enriching life and go in places where I'm celebrated. So I hope that, I don't know if I spoke for 15 minutes, but I could always keep going. But I'm not sure how good I am on time. But those are the things that I've done in order to become the scientist that I am today. And I don't take a second of it for granted. So having the right people around me, staying grounded in my purpose, being able to contribute in a meaningful way, and making impact like a daily part of my life. Those have been the things that made me the scientist that I am today. And I have such a rewarding and fulfilling career because I've chosen to take a path that suits me, not so much as the path that is more suitable for others. So yeah, staying true to myself, staying grounded, loving what I do, occupying spaces where I'm welcome and where I can be a champion, and then harnessing my expertise and presenting it in a way that's digestible and relatable to others.
This is just great. You still have time if you would like to add something else. We see you so energetic, and you still have some time if you would like to add something else.
Absolutely. So I am an entomologist. And entomology, when I was in college, it was a very fortuitous path that I went into. I originally wanted to be an OBGYN, but then when I shadowed an OBGYN because I love children, and then I was like, I learned about the OB and I was like, no, that's not for me. So having experience will also help you, solidify your path. But I took an entomology course, and it was because I gave 110% with my collection. I did my best. I sat in the front row. The teacher was like, you should pursue this entomology. And then he told me that I could get a full ride to FAMU where I got my master's. So showing up as your best self and giving 110% gave me, a free ride to get a master's. And later on, when it came time for me to get my PhD, being able to market yourself to individuals and having an elevator pitch ready allowed me to get my PhDs for free as well. So like while I was in college, I studied abroad in so many diverse countries, and I filled a passport with international travel. And I'm just so grateful for all the experiences. And then when I worked with my first small farmer, that's an experience I'd never forget. So as a scientist, I spent the majority of my career learning, like being the recipient of all this knowledge. But then once I got in the field and working with small farmers, I was able to put my degree to use. So using the things that I've learned to impact the productivity of small farmers was huge. The farmers in Ghana on cocoa farms, they make less than $2 a day. And it's because of the insects and insect related diseases. So being able to use that knowledge that I have to uplift farmers that are in need and to inspire children that, that aren't sure of their paths is something that I'm like definitely committed to. And last but not least, using technology. So I recently got on social media and I have just taken that and just run with it. So I created a platform and I've created a community where I share scholarships, I share resources, I mentor students. I have a website where I mentor students on a monthly basis. And that's allowed me to like share the challenges and obstacles that I go through, but also alleviate some of the financial burden associated with higher education. So taking the time to give back has been huge for me as well. And I'm just so grateful that I could, be in front of you today and speak to you about the things I'm passionate about. I love insects. I love the environment. I love working with youth and especially working with farmers. Oftentimes when I meet with children, they think that their food comes from the grocery store, but it's an army of farmers, and most of the farmers in the cocoa industry are women farmers. So it's an army of farmers that allow us to choose between this apple or this orange or this tomato. And I love sharing with students where their food comes from, highlighting the importance of insects and all the diverse, ways they contribute to our ecosystem and showing up in places. So it's one thing to be a part of a movement, but when you have your boots on the ground and you advocate and you offer scholarships and mentorships, I think that's the true impact. That's how you become a catalyst of change, by doing all the things you can and putting your passion into it and showing up as your authentic self. That's what brought me here today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Wilkerson, for sharing your journey. It's so inspirational. Uh, Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Gishungi. One of the reasons I wanted to interview you is because of your passion in studying insect, both harmful and beneficial, and also your past work with small scale farmers in developing countries. Um, it's also really inspiring how you're mentoring young people interested in bugs through your book and social media. So I'll, it's my pleasure to interview you. And my first question would be, um, what guidance would you give to women in science to be more vocal about their work and inspire the next generation, and also challenge the stereotypes of who belongs in science?
Whew, that's a loaded, good question. So I believe the first part was, wait, remind me of the first part. How do I, if you read the question again,
I,
that'd be
I'm saying giving guidance to women,
mhm.
how to be more vocal
Okay.
about their work and inspire the next generation. Yeah.
Okay, so I've never had a problem with being vocal. My problem is shutting up. So that naturally, I've just been born to just be outspoken about the things that I'm passionate about. But if you're on the shyer side and you tend to not speak up, then it's such a lost opportunity. So every single like source of elevation, it comes from an encounter with a particular person. So any opportunity that you have to elevate is connected to an individual. And so choosing not to speak up will not only restrict you from opportunities, but it also lessens your impact that you could have on individuals. So just practice communicating in ways that you're comfortable, practice showing up as yourself, and also practice affirming yourself as an expert in whatever field, you're interested in, or whatever field that you work in. And if I could give guidance to women that want to occupy these types of spaces, I would just say stay grounded in your why. Your purpose and your why is going to be your wings that'll carry you to the next level. So finding what you're passionate about and occupying spaces that welcome you is a great place to start. But also, like, learning how to tune out the negative voices that tell you that you're not enough, or to tell you that you don't belong, because it's mostly in our heads. So when you do show up, what's the worst that can happen? They tell you no. So then you only need one yes. So I feel like challenging yourself to quiet that inner voice, that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome that can sometimes be overwhelming is very important. And challenging yourself to show up as yourself, regardless of whether you're the only one, regardless of whether it's not a diverse space, you belong. So I constantly tell myself that I'm enough, that I belong, and I don't let any person or any obstacle stop me from achieving what I set out to do.
Yeah, thank you very much. You've actually talked of how women face a feeling inadequate in the field of science that is dominated by men, and
Mhm.
how to deal with the imposter syndrome. Uh, so the other question will be, as a woman in a leadership position, working as a chief scientist, you've you've traveled to many countries, and do you see proportionate representation of women in decision making forum, and what steps should be taken to empower more women in science? Yeah.
So I think the two things we can do is number one is advocacy, and the second thing we can do is action. So I got my PhDs from Penn State, and so I recently was elected to serve on the College of Agriculture's board of directors. So serving in positions where you have decision making power, how dollars are spent, how resources how resources are divided amongst people is important. And like advocating, but also offering resources. So one of the best things you can do is learn how to self-advocate so that you can occupy these spaces with power, and show up as yourself is important. And also joining committees, joining boards, diversifying spaces that aren't as welcoming, and affirming that you belong. So those are some of the things that I do in order to advocate for more women in power. And I see that the pendulum is slowly changing. But when I go to a lot of these conferences, I am typically the only, sometimes the only Black woman or the only woman, and I don't let that discourage me. So instead, I not only occupy these spaces, but then I get on social networks as well, and occupy that space. So visibility is huge. And so you never know who you can impact by just showing up. And even if your words change the trajectory of one person, that's still positive change. And a lot of people, well, sometimes they assume that they set out to change the world, but change really starts with changing the world around you, changing how you think and how you operate in your own day-to-day life. So not having the aspiration to change the world, but just changing your world is more impactful, in my opinion.
So in that leadership position, what would you say is the primary challenge you've ever faced, and how did you overcome it?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. So I'm a scientist, a classically trained, data-driven scientist, and I focus on the facts. And so, working in our nation's capital in DC, it's a very political climate. So oftentimes, even if I have the most data, the most facts to point to something else, a lot of the decisions are politically driven. So I have to balance like my love and commitment to the science in a very political landscape. So I'm so happy to serve, to be a servant and work for the district government. But there's a lot of ideas and innovations that cannot go into play because of the political dynamics in the environment that I occupy. And also getting the word from the people. So I do a lot of surveys, I do a lot of focus groups, I go to a lot of community meetings, because it's one thing to think like this is the answer, this is the innovation, but when you speak with the people, it can change your trajectory to a whole different direction. So it's a big challenge working in the district, writing regulations in the district, because you have so many stakeholders that want to be pleased. You have the environmental activists that want a pesticide-free DC, and then you have the pesticide companies that want to be in business and put toolbox in the hands of applicators that use pesticides. So it's a very delicate balance between highlighting what's important for the environment, highlighting what's important to the people, and pleasing the stakeholders. So working in a political climate as a scientist, boy, that has been very challenging, but every day I work on it.
And wherever you're traveling to, maybe other countries, developing countries, and you have when you have long-term assignments, how do you navigate through this, the traveling and while embracing your identity as a woman, taking note that different parts of the world have different challenges, different culture? How do you deal with that? Yeah.
So the first thing, I'm respectful of any culture in any space that I enter. I do my homework and learn the cultural norms. I learn how to communicate. I familiarize myself with the language. When I was in Ghana, I went to an elementary school and I learned how to speak Tree. I want to be able to communicate with farmers before I make the impact. And I don't assume that I'm the expert. I'm working with farmers who grandparents and grandparents and great grandparents were farmers. So I don't assume that I'm the expert. But sometimes when I am in these international spaces and I go to these conferences to speak as an expert. Sometimes they say, "Hey, can you get me a soda? Can you get me like I'm not a presenter, like I'm working at the facility." And so in other spaces, when I'll contribute an idea and my idea won't be received, but the man next to me will say the same exact thing and his words will be received. So it's a balance between like being patient, understanding the power of my voice and my presence, and whether somebody receives it or not, I don't let that discourage me from showing up. And the longest I've ever spent abroad, I spent 3 years in Africa because I specialize in African agriculture. But I was there for 1 year, one consistent year on a Norman Borlaug Food Security Fellowship. And it was terrible. So that was the longest I've ever been from home. It was terrible making that adjustment. I would cry every day. I was trying to bring America home, and then suddenly it clicked, and it was like, wait, just indulge in the local community. I started wearing, their clothes, eating their food, going to church, going to weddings, and that changed everything. So instead of trying to bring home to where I was, I found pieces of home in the community and in the world around me. So I just have such a deep appreciation for African agriculture, and just adjusting was huge because in America, like, we have Wi-Fi and we have so many other luxuries that when I was in the village and in the field, all of those things were gone. So it just gave me such a deep appreciation for the individuals that grow our food and for the individuals that provide us with resources for like cell phones and other technologies and chocolate and all sorts of things. So understanding the effort and the work that farmers put in, it just makes me more gracious for the life and the luxuries that I have in the States. But traveling abroad has been one of the biggest eye openers of my career, and I just would encourage anybody, if they have the time, the resources. There are several agencies where you can sign up to volunteer. Like I was a farmer to farmer volunteer with USAID in Lebanon, and I went to Lebanon for a month, and it was transformative as well. So finding ways to package your expertise to an organization where you can collaborate with them and create synergy is huge. But I living in Ghana and living in West Africa were some of the best times of my life after I made the adjustment, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
Well, thank you. So, and you've talked of how you draw inspiration from different mentors and also support from your mom. Uh, 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 what advice would you give to women leaders in science to just have to maintain a work-life balance, considering how demanding the field of research is? Yeah.
Ooh, work-life balance is huge. So if you want to look at work-life balance, look at some of the leaders at whatever organization you work at and see how happy and fulfilled they are. That'll give you a good idea whether that company is a good fit for you. But staying grounded, doing things that like feed my spiritual growth, my mental health, having a good therapist is important, and understanding my why, understanding why I'm here, understanding my purpose, and having a great team. So at my agency, Department of Energy and Environment, I have a phenomenal team that I can depend on. And like one of my superpowers that helps me with work-life balance has been delegation. When I first started at my agency, I wanted to do everything on my own. I wanted it to be perfect, and I hate using the P word, but I felt like I put so many things on my plate because I felt I only trusted myself to execute them in the way in which I wanted them to be executed. But learning how to build strong teams and depending on your team and delegating to your teams is like foundational to work-life balance. And sometimes you have to say no to certain things. And I haven't gone on vacation in maybe about 2 years, but I'm going on a scuba diving trip in 2 weeks. And I'm so excited to finally do something for me and finding opportunities that allow you to practice your passion. Giving back not only pours into the other person, but it naturally fills you up as well. So going to therapy, being able to release some of the baggage and trauma from working, giving back, volunteerism, mentorship is huge. So I found that when I'm feeling low and I want to be energized, I'll focus on gratitude. I'll think about the things that I'm grateful for. I'll read the letters from elementary school students that I mentored in the past. And then I also, remind myself of my why. So that really helps me with work-life balance. And also learning how to be strategic with using the word no. That definitely helps.
Yeah, sure it does. Thank you. So the final question for you, what advice would you give to CIMINT to grow women leaders in science?
Um, Representation is important, advocacy is important, mentorship, especially the next generation, is eventually, we're gonna age and you have to pass the baton. So instead of being, some people feel like, oh, I want to die at my desk, but then that knowledge, goes with you. So welcoming the next generation of scholars and being able to capture institutional knowledge so that when the people retire or leave it's not lost. And also like having a spirit of collaboration. A lot of people are in competition with others. And so having a collaborative approach is super helpful and important. And also having policy. So policies are a great driver for change as well. So speaking to the people, understanding their needs and using policy to drive change is huge. Having opportunities to alleviate financial burdens associated with higher education is huge. And allowing diverse people to occupy spaces. So visibility is huge too. And I feel like CIMIT has it. They're doing everything right. I've watched so many of these videos, and I was just so, inspired by the women leaders that I saw, and just creating spaces where women can share their stories, where diversity will have, a safe space to be shared, and being a champion for that. So I think that's huge.
Uh, Thank you so much for sharing and that inspirational talk.
Thank you, Hannah. It was so good to speak to you. I appreciate you.
We appreciate Megan Wilkerson and Hannah Gichungi for the very inspiring and enlightening conversation. Now we would like to open the floor for questions from the audience, and we invite you to raise your hand, to turn on your camera and unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question or comment, or you can submit it via Slido. The QR code is already on the screen. We have already received several questions through this tool. And the first one is, thank you so much for your enthusiasm and honesty. Are these aspects of science as a career that you wish you were different or that need to be changed?
Well, I think there's several things that need to be changed. So one of the major things is I don't appreciate how a lot of scientific information is gate kept. A lot of scientific information is behind paywalls. I'm a big fan of open source, peer-to-peer, accessible information. And so, a lot of scientists aspire to be in like these, they write these, they do this research and they put it in these journals that are behind paywalls. And then one scientist will quote that knowledge and it'll help them with their dissertation, but the people who need it the most, they don't have access to it. So making science more accessible to the people who need it is huge to me. That's a huge problem. So farmers are battling a lot on the ground, and the information that we practice in the lab, the information that we write in publications, finding ways to deliver that to the people that need it is something that I'm hoping that will change. So information, I know people want to monetize things, but behind paywalls is a very dangerous place for good information to be.
Thank you so much. Now, also, we have Olivia Odillo. She is already raising her hand. So, Olivia, please.
Hello, Doctor, and good evening here from Nairobi. I just have one question for you, and this is for about promoting science communication. So, could you share your efforts on how you promote science communication and also increase the diversity in that field, and how probably you nurture passions and also consider careers in entomology for any upcoming young scientist?
Hi, Olivia. Thank you so much for asking your question. Turning your camera on. It's lovely to meet you and converse with you. So the biggest thing I would recommend is just showing up. Showing up as your authentic self. You are going to be the only you that exists on the planet. So a lot of people want to deliver information like somebody else, but Beyonce is already Beyonce. Keith Lee is already Keith Lee. Like Taylor Swift is already Taylor Swift. So finding ways to be a champion of yourself and contributing to the field in a very passionate and a very driven way is super important. So science should be digestible. It should be accessible. So learning how to deliver your message in a way that multiple people can receive it. So I try to use layman's terms. I don't try to use a lot of highly scientific or technological knowledge, because the average person, they just want to get their information quickly digested and keep it moving. So I find ways to make my science relatable to others. And I start with providing solutions to a lot of problems that I face. So I find myself coming with the mindset of, what did I need 5 years ago? What did I need 3 years ago? So I try to address the things that I needed and deliver those things. But science should be fun. So it's just that simple. Like going back to my third grade teacher, making science fun and showing people that this is what a scientist look like. If I have the degree and expertise, I'm a scientist. So there's room for you. And so as far as entomology, insects are on every single continent. Insects are literally in my apartment. Like insects are everywhere. So if you wanted a career as an entomologist, if you go to my TikTok, I have so many videos about how to become an entomologist, whether that's through education or whether that's through an organization or getting a certification. But there's so many problems that are created by insects and that can be solved by insects. So insects are pollinators, producers, they're predators. They contribute so much. They maintain diseases, and they 3/4 of your plate is pollinated by an insect. So if you find an insect system that you're passionate about, if you can go the collegiate route, that's fine. But if you want to join an entomological organization like Entomological Society of America and other boards, they offer certifications where you can get certified and you can work as an entomologist. There's forensic entomology, agricultural research. Like there's a place for you in entomology. There's a bug with your name on it. So just also telling yourself that you contribute value to something and learning how to communicate with confidence. Whether nobody's listening, you hear your own voice. So that's more than enough, contributing anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. So good.
Thank you. So I'm going to, we have a lot of questions here in the Slido. When you started your career, did you imagine being where you are now? How do you keep learning every day? What are your favorite resources to expand your horizons?
Well, okay. So when I originally started my career, when I started college, I told myself, I'm not leaving this university until I get the highest degree attainable. So 11 years I spent in college. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology, a Master's in Agricultural Sciences from FAMU, and then I have a PhD in Entomology and a PhD in International Agriculture and Development. And my original manifestation was, I want to work for the government and make 6 figures. But I've been doing that for the past 3 years, and I'm grateful for my career, but it's the piece that I did not put in that manifestation was impact. Impact is priceless. And so now I saw that there were holes in the field. And instead of like complaining about the holes, I found ways to fill those holes. So I created my website, www.drmeganwilkerson.com, where I offer mentorship. I speak at university. I just spoke at Yale 2 months ago. I speak at Penn State, at Fort Valley, a lot of different universities, so that I can be a champion for the future generation of STEM scholars. STEM is not a very diverse field. So anytime I can occupy these spaces and build community and show, future scholars that you belong and this field needs you is something that's important to me.
Great. Also, we have here Francisca Mutetti. Would you like to open your micro and your camera, please, Francisca?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Megan. So my question is, during your career journey, are there moments when you doubted your abilities as a scientist and you felt like you were not enough for this field? And if yes, how did you overcome this?
That probably happens on a daily basis. Like when I got the email to participate in this talk, I was like, I'm looking at other women and I see Nobel Peace Prize and recipient of this, and I'm just like overwhelmed by how successful other women are. But then I have to remind myself, like, this path that you're on is on purpose. So nothing happens by coincidence. And so I have to constantly remind myself that I'm enough. I contribute to the field, and I put people in my life that will champion and cheerlead and remind me of that as well. Like every day I go and occupy these spaces, and I'm the only woman sometimes, the only Black woman sometimes, the only person from the South. I occupy them anyway. So you have to have a fearless and defiant attitude in order to penetrate a lot of these spaces. But it comes from me staying grounded in my purpose, me having faith and just recognizing like the God in me and the things that I can contribute to the field. And so faith is a huge thing. My family is a huge thing. Community is huge. Having mentors that will pour into you and uplift you. But I constantly, encounter self-doubt. I constantly encounter imposter syndrome. But I much rather live with fear than live with regret. So it's so painful for me to say, what if I did this? What if I did that? So I much rather be fearful and do it than to sit back and live with regret. So I constantly tell myself, like, there's kids watching this that, that they want to be a singer or football player, because when they turn on the TV, that's what they see. So I try to occupy spaces as an entomologist, as a scientist, to show them that there's space for you here. And you should occupy it. But I battle with doubt, is like one of my biggest haters. So I battle with self-doubt all the time. And this morning when I was trying to get the Zoom hooked up, I was like, so it's always something. But having a spirit of collaboration and gratitude is what gets me through. I put my pants on one leg at a time, like anybody else. And so I always tell myself, I'm not better than them and they're not better than me. So being able to get rid of my ego and show up authentically. Like I didn't even want to wear this blazer because that's a real professional. That's really not me. So I'm gonna take that off. But just being able to show up as myself and just contribute to a space where I'm welcome is something that I try to do every single day. But thank you so much for your question. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francisca. We have a comment here in our chat box from Natalia Palacios. Thank you for such an engaging and genuine conversation. Your insights and guidance have been invaluable, truly appreciated. The emphasis you place on science communication and the importance of our role in it. So thank you, Natalia, for your comment. And I'm going to read another question from Slido. It says, from your point of view, what does it mean and why is it important to be a woman scientist in 2024? How are women leaders in science changing the field of science?
Well, I'm biased because I am a woman, but women are usually hidden in a lot of different spaces. And it's because, I'm not sure what the reason, but it's harder for us to occupy these spaces. So there are a lot of injustice as far as like pay and as far as like accessibility to like different resources, and there's a lot of obstacles that we have to overcome. Some want us to be mothers in the house, others want to occupy the boardroom, whatever space you occupy. Like women have so much to contribute to the table, and I'm so grateful for organizations like yours that allow, you know, women leaders to speak and capture our essence. But as a woman, I battle so many different things, and that never stops me for advocating for women that look like me, or women that want the same things as me. But we have so much to contribute to the conversation, and I feel like we're doing ourselves such a disservice when we remain quiet or when we hide behind, you know, others. And so even when a path is not there for you, as a woman, we owe it to ourselves to carve that path out regardless. So having a fearless commitment to show up unapologetically as myself has been huge. Authenticity has been huge, and just leaning in towards the spaces that welcome me. And even when spaces don't welcome me, I show up anyway. So being defiant enough to have a commitment to your dreams, whether you're invited to the space or not, telling myself that I belong and that I should be here, and then also sitting the elevator down so that other women can rise up as well. So the most harmful thing that we can do as women, especially Black women, is having a competitive spirit. Instead, we should approach it as collaborative. And so I'm constantly sharing resources, looking for opportunities to collaborate, recommending women for other opportunities, hiring women, working with women, supporting women-owned businesses. So it really starts locally. So if you want women to do well, support, you know, women business owners, buy from, you know, your local small businesses. And so one part of it is advocating and saying that you support it, but putting your money there and you know, supporting those businesses that are women owned, and creating spaces like this for women is important too.
Thank you so much for this important advice. What advice also would you give to institutions like CIMIT? How about to foster organizational culture that is empowering women leaders?
Starting with the people, asking the people what they need, what resources will alleviate the burdens that they have, doing surveys. So being able to harvest information from the population that you want to advance is important. So creating a safe space for women to share their challenges, but not also just being a recipient of information, but putting action with it as well. So already, like, this is huge. So Simit is already on the right path. It's not much I can do to you know to tell you to improve upon it, but continuing to pour into women and creating a safe place for women to engage and speak. And even the women, the individuals who ask questions were women. So it's like this is needed. And so continuing this, and then also collaborating with other organizations that have similar missions to be a champion for women leaders, and giving them financial support, supporting their businesses, alleviating burdens that they have. And yeah, but I feel like Simon is on the right path, but listening to the needs that women have, and matching them with the resources they need in order to overcome whatever obstacles they're facing is huge.
Thank you so much. It says there can be pressure to conform to a certain way of being as a scientist. Do you think this pressure is decreasing? How have you managed this pressure yourself?
Whoo, whoa. The pressure is not, I don't see the pressure alleviating. I just see that I'm becoming stronger. So when I started my PhD program, there were 3 women who came from FAMU, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. So we got our master's from FAMU, and then we went to Penn State. I was the only woman from my cohort that graduated. They either mastered out or disappeared. And so a lot of those pressures can be alleviated by finding community. So finding community and being able to ask for help when you need it was huge, but the pressures are still there. Like I feel the same amount of pressures I did from elementary school, middle school, college, like into my professional career. The pressure is there, but I've just become more savvy and I become stronger within myself. And so you have to learn how to drown out the things that don't serve you and collaborate with the people who do. So yeah, the pressure is only going to get worse. but you become stronger. And so having boundaries is important too, and just not allowing people to have access to you. Having access to you is a luxury. So that shouldn't be extended to every individual, because everybody is not going to be a champion of your time and, you know, be supportive. So creating boundaries, having a good therapist, having a team of mentors that will pour into you and cheerlead for you, having a strong foundation, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's faith, whatever, whether it's crystals, whatever your foundation is, just being consistent with that and staying grounded and having work-life balance. And I don't know if this is a problem where everybody else is from, but in America, they champion working more than 40 hours a week. So learning how to say no and turn that computer off, because once you leave an organization, they'll replace you. And so it's just being able to manage those things and being in control of your mentality is huge. Mental health is something that I advocate for all the time. So yeah, the pressure is only getting worse, in my opinion. And I've just become stronger.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all these advices. There is one more question here. What's your favorite book and why?
My favorite book. Woo. Right now I'm reading the I think it's called The Journey to a Thousand Suns or something like that. But I like, oh wait, it's another book that I love too. It's called, it's not the Four Apologies, but it's something about, it's for something. I wish I could look it up and let you know, but that was a really good book. 48 Laws of Powers. I like being a strategic thinker. The Daily Laws, anything by Robert Greene is good. I'm a huge fan of Robert Greene. I love inspirational self-help books. And dang, I wish I could remember the title. Of my memory is so shot out, but it's the four agreements. The Four Agreements. I love the Four Agreements. And it teaches you how to let things go, how to lean into places that you know pour into you. I love the Four Agreements. I love The Power of Now, which is pretty good. Daily Laws, if you want like a daily easy read where you can just pick up and everyday read a prompt that'll help you like stay grounded and think about things from a strategic perspective, is huge. Anything Robert Greene, I'll read.
Excellent. Do you have any final advice, any final comments so we close our session of today?
My final word is probably that no is such a powerful word. And oftentimes we tell ourselves no. And I would just encourage you to just, even if you're not prepared, if you aren't knowledgeable, if you're scared, do it anyway. And so I was very reluctant to get on social media, but I've been able to build a platform and build a community, and it inspired me to create a website and mentor students. And because of that, like I have scholars who now have full rides to get their masters and get their PhDs, and they wouldn't have had it, you know, had I not had just been consistent and took procrastination off the table. And we're in a time where nothing is impossible. And it sounds so cliche, but if you build it, they will come. And there's a quote that I really, really love. It said, if you build a better mousetrap, they will I can't even think of the quote, but if you can capitalize or make something better, I would just encourage you to do it. But it's like the first no is the one you tell yourself. So always tell yourself yes. And even if somebody doesn't have buy-in to your idea, the idea wasn't given to them. The idea was given to you. I have an insect coloring book, right? And when I did the coloring book, some people were like, people don't color anymore. People are digital. People are this. And it's an international bestseller. So the no you tell yourself is very detrimental. So tell yourself yes, be consistent, and just show up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of Brian Govers, Director General of CIMMYT and the CIMMYT community, we thank you so much, Hannah Wilkerson, for your great, energetic, stimulating, enthusiastic, and so much inspiring talk. We very much appreciate you sharing with us your professional journey and personal growth experience, being a successful leader and inspiration for all of us. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your time. Also, we thank all the audience for joining today and invite you to the following seminar, Catalyst of Change, Women Leaders in Science. Have a nice day.
Bridging different identities is perhaps in my blood. As the daughter of a Turkish father and an American mother, I grew up in a household where Christmas and Eid were equally festive and important. Being a city kid, I never imagined working in agricultural development, at least not until I read about Norman Borlaug, who lived and breathed his mission. Some of his last words were, "Take it to the farmer." Now consider this. What if our collective mental imagery of the farmer and our imagination of what his, her, or their life should look like is shaping the development agenda? And what if we're perpetuating gender inequality? Are we taking it to all the farmers? Gender determines what a farmer has the right to access: land, labor, inputs, information, credit, technology, markets, machinery, and much, much more. Women and girls face systematic barriers to owning and managing farms, yet they tend to fields planted with varieties they had no control over the development of. Homes, villages, marketplaces are not controlled environments. Every decision, every action that occurs in people's lives happens in a social context. Gender is an inescapable part of this. Hearing similar statements repeatedly is what sparked my own transformation and made me question, how could we completely insulate important life decisions from farmers' lives? We may continue producing varieties that won't get adopted or miss poverty alleviation goals if genetic gains do not translate to equity gains for women and girls. And as much as gender influences the lives of farmers, it influences our lives. If in our own institutions and programs we continue to create barriers for women, how can we expect to remove barriers for women smallholder farmers? Dr. Borlaug's message to take it to the farmer was a wake-up call. But it's increasingly clear that to really fulfill his vision, we need to listen to unheard voices. Women do have voices. To hear them, we have to build bridges between crop improvement and social sciences, between the lab bench and the village bench. We also need to look inside ourselves, to question our assumptions, and to identify our internalized norms around gender, which we project onto our work and the populations we serve.
Please join our next seminar in the Catalyst of Change series